Hi guys, it's Emily, and today I'm here to bring you a recent reads video. I got 3 books I want to talk about, so let's just get right into it. The first book I want to mention is Leadership in Turbulent Times by Doris Kearns Goodwin. And if you don't know, Doris Kearns Goodwin is basically like my career idol. I love her, and I'm like so envious of her life because she teaches history at Harvard, and she writes books, and then in her off time she like interviews presidents and does really cool stuff. And she lives in Concord, Massachusetts, which is like one of my favorite places I've ever been. So yeah, I just really love Doris. We are not on birth name basis, but you know, that's what I call her. So this is a group biography of 4 presidents: Abraham Lincoln, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin D. Roosevelt, FDR, and LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson. And these 4 presidents are all presidents that Doris has written a full-length book on, and so she knows a lot about their life, and she has a lot of research materials. I am one of those people that likes to read the notes in the back, and she actually references her own books as some of the references in this book. Like, how cool is that you're like considered a quality enough source that you can cite your own books in your other books? I don't know, it's just really cool. So anywho, this is talking about Lincoln, Roosevelt, and Johnson, and how their leadership skills developed and how their leadership skills fit the times that they lived in and the impact their leadership, of course, had on the world. And each the book is divided into sections. The first part is their early life and how they developed their leadership skills. The second section is the great tragedy of their life. Each man suffered something that affected and changed how they did their leadership. And then, of course, the third section is how they executed their leadership skills in their particular presidency. And she uses a case study of each president. So like, for example, for Abraham Lincoln, she uses the implementation of the Emancipation Proclamation, and with Theodore Roosevelt, she uses the coal strike. And then, of course, for FDR, she uses the first 100 days of his presidency, and then for LBJ, she uses the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. So it's just a really interesting book. I will say it's not my favorite book of hers. I'm not like super interested in leadership theory or anything like that, but I enjoyed it. It's not, of course, it's not as detailed as some of her other books because she is covering 4 presidents in the span of about 450 pages. So, but it's you know, it's not like, just like if you're wanting a full-fledged biography, you need to read a full-fledged biography. But on the whole, I really enjoyed this, and I definitely recommend it if you're interested in leadership theory or in these 4 presidents, or if you just like Doris Kearns Goodwin. I then reread a book. I reread The Bean Trees by Barbara Kingsolver. This is a book that I read a long time ago, probably when I was like 13 or 14, and I really enjoyed it. And it's a book that I think about a lot, even though it's been a long time since I read it. So I have my list of books that I want to reread this year, and this was on it. So finally got around to it. This is about a young woman named Taylor Greer, and she grew up in Kentucky, and pretty much every girl in her class got pregnant and, you know, dropped out of high school and, you know, and she lives in the rural Appalachian Mountains, and so there's not much prospects for her life, and so she decides that she is going to defeat the odds, and she does, and she graduates high school, and she decides she wants to get as far away from Kentucky as possible. So she sets out on a road trip to find the place where she belongs, and on the way she is given a young Indian child named Turtle in Oklahoma, and she and Turtle become a family, and they make it all the way to Tucson, Arizona, and they find another family. They find a family of a roommate named Louise, and then a Taylor's boss, Maggie, and then there's a young couple from Guatemala, I believe, or possibly Colombia, that Maggie is hosting at her house. They are illegal immigrants, but they are, Maggie is trying to get them to a safe house in a different location, and they have bled violence, and throughout the book you find out that they have suffered tragedy in their life. And this is just a very simple book about what it means to be a family and what it means, how you create your own family if your birth family is not in your life. And it's a really beautiful book. I highly recommend this. This book was written in 1989 or published in 1989, and a lot of the comments it makes about immigration are absolutely still relevant in our present society. You know, they talk about what immigrants contribute to our country, and you know how our country is made up of immigrants. And yeah, it's just a really beautiful story. I highly recommend this. Barbara Kingsolver can definitely write, and I'm already planning to read the sequel to this book, Pigs in Heaven. I have it on my library holds list to get pretty soon. So yeah, I really love this book. I highly recommend it. You will not regret reading this book. It's just absolutely wonderful. I then reread another book. I reread Born a Crime by Trevor, and I listened to this on audiobook again for the second time, and I read this for book club. I have actually joined a proper book club. Some ladies at my church, they used to have a book club, but they sort of fell out of meeting, and they decided to start it up again. And they know that I love to read, so they asked me to join. And so we had our first meeting last weekend. We met at a pie shop and had great pie and discussed this book. And of course, it sort of turned into a social event. And so, you know, it was partially a book club, partially a social event, but it was a lot of fun, and I'm really glad that I went. I have never really been in a book club that met properly. I've done one-time book discussions or things with my church before, but this is hopefully going to be a proper hang out, read books, hang out, drink wine, whatever kind of book club. So yeah, so this is Trevor Noah's memoir about his years growing up during apartheid in South Africa. He is a half white, half black person. His father was white and his mother was black. He identifies as black, and part of the book talks about his struggles because in South Africa during apartheid there was really, of course, there was a huge focus on race, but also your race wasn't actually that important to the system per se, because he talks about how Chinese people were considered white, but Japanese people were considered black because of the diplomacy stuff. So clearly, if one set of Asian people can be black and one set of Asian people can be white, then race really isn't the big issue. It's your perception of the race. So anyway, and he talks about growing up during this time in school and his struggles in school and his relationship with his dad and his relationship with his mom. Of course, it's a really funny book, but I actually have to admit, I was kind of shocked how sad it was. I think the first time I read it, I was more focused on the funny parts, and this time around I was like, oh, his childhood was actually kind of depressing in a lot of ways. For example, he can't play outside because there's concern that the police will take him to an orphanage, and so he has to stay inside while his cousins are playing, and his friends, he can't really make friends. And he talks about the only people he has friends that he's friends with when he first was growing up was the children of maids that worked in the neighborhood, because they were the only ones whose social status they could play with him. And so it's really sad in a lot of ways. And it wasn't as funny this time. I mean, certain parts are funny, but I was actually really surprised at how depressing it was. But I enjoyed it, and I would recommend it on audio if you're interested. I ended up getting the library DVDs. Okay, this is a tangent, but does anybody remember, like a few years ago, Audible gave away this book for free on audio, and I made an Audible account specifically to get this book for free, and then I stopped my subscription because hello, $15 a month for one audio book is crazy when you can get them for free at your local library. Anyway, assuming you have a decent library. I recognize that some libraries are not that great. But anyway, so I had an Audible account, and I listened to this book on Audible for free the first time I read it. But then this time when I tried to get into my Audible account, it wouldn't let me get on it. And I can't get my copy of this audiobook from Audible. So I had to get it from the library and listen to it on CD, which is fine, but I would have liked to be able to listen to it on my phone. But anyway, so that's annoying. I wish I could get it. If anybody from Audible is listening to this, let me have my account back so I can have this audiobook back. But anyway, yes, really enjoyed this. Highly recommend it. Definitely on audio. So that's all I've been reading lately. I hope everybody's having a good day and you're reading some great books, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye!